Good morning, everybody. We're in the dark again. What am I going to do? It's just life in Kyiv. Um, so that's why I look like a ghost. Ooh, it's the ghost of Christmas past. Actually, this is the ghost of Christmas future, baby, because the future is now. So, news we're waking up to for Monday, December 9th, date 1020 of the full scale invasion. I, I don't know what's going on. I really don't. Last night, pardon me, the Russians sent on the territory of Ukraine 37 attack drones. And the Air Force is reporting that they were not all Shaheds, that they were of mixed types. And it's unclear to me what that means. It could be that the Air Force is starting to report more clearly the distinction in the flavors of drones that the Russians are building based on the Shahed model. So the Russians aren't just building Shahed attack drones, they're building Shahed decoys, which are just intended to overwhelm air defense, right? Use up the bullets. And very cheap little drones, lightweight, made of foam and cardboard, basically, plywood. Um, They're building attack drones, decoys, and reconnaissance slash attack drones. So Shaheds that are fitted with cameras in addition to their payload. And it could be that that's what they're indicating. It could also mean that there's an entirely new types of either Russian produced drones or Chinese drones or other types of drones coming in. I do not know, but I'm working on finding out. In addition to the 37 drones, they sent two KH 5969 rockets or X 59. Those were both shot down. Now, of the 37 drones, 18 were shot down, 18 were taken out by electronic warfare. And at the time of this recording, which is about 10:10 a.m., there is still one drone in the air. So maybe by tonight we'll know what happened to that other drone. It's disconcerting to me because I don't know what's going on. Last week, the Russians sent about half, three fifths, every night of the average number of drones that they've been sending for the last 6 weeks. Why have they cut back? Now, usually when they do that, it's because they're massing them for a massive attack. And I fully expected that attack to come over this past weekend. It did not. The numbers remained low. And this is the lowest. 37 is just about the lowest that we've seen it in some time. Now, what could this mean? Well, it could mean that they are, as I suggested, massing for a large attack, and we'll simply see it this weekend. That could be. Or maybe someday during this week, if there's a day with significance for the Russians for some reason. I'm unaware of anything. Usually the big attacks come on the weekends. The other possibility, and I hesitate to even hope, is that they just don't have enough. They just don't have enough. And that's hard to believe because we know that they've doubled domestic production in the last year. They're churning them out at breakneck speed at the plant in Tartaristan. And they're still getting shipments from the Iranians. So it's the short answer is I don't know what's happening. I don't know if they're running out of drones or if uh, they're simply stockpiling them for a mass attack. Or maybe it's a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. We know that the Ukrainians have been very successful at striking some of the drone bases and storage facilities in Russia. Maybe that's contributing to a shortage of drones. We shall see. Uh, Over the weekend, Zelensky was in Paris for the reopening of Notre Dame, along with President elect Guido over here. I can't, I still, America, I still can't believe we are doing this again. Anyway, um, you can be sure this guy, this Zelensky, he's a smart guy and he is doing what he has to do to keep his country together and successful. You can be sure that he was in Paris talking to Trump and whispering in his ear that if he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, the answer is to defeat Russia. You just know he was hinting that way, maneuvering. He knows how to play Trump, right? And he's got a patience that I could never have. So let's hope that it worked. And we're the as Yermak said, Andrei Yermak, who's advisor to Zelensky, and who just got back from a trip to D.C. where he met with the Trump officials, he met with White House officials. According to Yermak, the rhetoric from the Trump camp regarding Ukraine has changed dramatically. Now, legitimately, Trump did just call for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine, which no one is paying any attention to. The Russians are not going to stop firing, so the Ukrainians can't. It's just that simple. So you can be sure that Zelensky made the most of this trip to try to get inside of Trump's head and lead him down a path of support. How successful Mr. Zelensky will have been remains to be seen. Now, in Syria, the people are just taken to the streets in celebration, as often happens with the fall of a dictator. You know, for the last 54 years, everybody has been forced to say how much they love the Assads. Now they can finally say, fuck off. The guys are riding tanks into town, some of them Russian. People are in the streets of every group that exists inside of Syria. And the HTS folks and the government officials that have surrendered to them are calling this a new age for Syria, an age of equality for all and democracy. Now, that remains to be seen. We heard similar kind of middle of the road, moderate talk from the Taliban in Afghanistan, and yet we know that they have closed every school for girls. Girls cannot learn to read and write anymore in Afghanistan. They can't work, they can't hold jobs, they can't be out in public without a male member of their family with them. I mean, the women are reduced to chattel once again in Afghanistan. Could we see the same thing happen in Syria? We hope not. HTS seems to be cooperating with the secular Kurdistani forces. And if they could form some coalition government, that would be great for everybody and stability in the region. Most critically, it would shut down Syria as a corridor for Iranian weapons to Hezbollah and Hamas. And that could make a difference in the world. Bashar al-Assad and his family are said to be in Russia. Now, I do want to point out that this is the last time anybody saw Assad in public. This is over a week ago. Here he is with an Iranian official. And in this press interview, he said that he was going to pulverize the rebels. Well, that did not happen, and he has fled the country, apparently. I say apparently because there's still the question of this flight data. Now, what this shows, if you look at this orange line, this is a Syrian IL-76 that left Damascus at 10:41 on Saturday night. We do not know who was aboard. The plane approaches the city of Homs, then suddenly it does a U-turn, starts losing altitude, and is presumed to have crashed. What we're hearing about this now is that this was an active combat zone where electronic warfare was at play that could have affected our readings of the flight data. And the Ukrainian GUR, the Military Intelligence Directorate for Ukraine, is saying that this whole thing with the plane was just a distraction so that Assad could get out of the country. And it may well have been, right? We we just don't know. Nobody has seen Assad yet. He's supposed to be safe in Moscow, and in all likelihood, he is. It's likely that what happened was the plane, in actuality, flew out of Damascus, right? Took off from Damascus, then it did a U turn, would have flown right over Homs on its way to Latakia, which is the main military air base for the Syrian army. It also could have been going to Khamenei Air Base, which is just south of here, which is the main military air base for the Russians. It's believed that Assad then boarded a Russian plane and went to Moscow with his family. That's the assumption that we're working under at this time. It is worth mentioning that the rebel forces have now said Russia has 48 hours to abandon the Tartus naval base and the Khamenei airfield. 48 hours to get the fuck out. And that's what's expected to happen. In Georgia, we're now on day 10 of protests. The protests keep going. And it seems to me that the failure of the dictator Assad, who has been propped up for the last 10 years by the might of the Russian Air Force, the failure of that regime and the impotence of the Russians to do anything about it, the Georgians smell blood in the water. In a nod to consumer capitalism, somebody in Georgia is making a fortune selling Russian flags for people to burn. They are burning them all over the place in Georgia. This is from Tbilisi, but these kinds of protests are now happening in the 8 major population centers in Georgia, as well as schools and universities. In fact, the police response to these has really softened up over the weekend. We're not seeing tear gas and rubber bullets and water cannon the way we had been. That could be signaling a significant shift in the response of the police themselves as Georgians, not necessarily from the powers that be. So we're watching this carefully and closely. Denmark has sent another batch of F-16s to Ukraine. We don't know how many, but it is worth mentioning that it appears that the United States is intentionally slowing the training of F-16 pilots. Ukraine has 30 pilots that are qualified and ready to go to training, and the U.S. is saying they don't have the room for them. They cannot train them, which makes no sense to me at all. No sense to me at all. Finally, in a little bit of economic news. Now, Russia closed the market for the ruble, right? And so in the very thin market that remains, the ruble has rebounded. It's now trading at, I think, 98 to the dollar, right? So it's stabilized. Again, artificially. And the ruble was some of the best daily economic data that we got out of Russia. And so we're not getting even that anymore. So I thought we'd just take a real quick look at the stock market. This is the MOEX index, the index of the 50 largest Russian companies. And it is down about a third since July. If you had put, let's say you put $100,000 into the MOEX back in July, you'd have about $73,000 today. You'd have lost $27,000. If you put that same 100,000 into, say, a U.S. index of the 50 largest S&P 500 stocks, you'd have about 110, 111,000. So it's not a global downtrend, right? This is specific to the Russians. They are suffering. And we've looked at some individual stocks, like the stocks of the largest real estate companies, which have been badly beaten up with even greater than 30% losses. In the case of the one, it's down from 14, the second largest real estate company in Russia is down from $14 a share in July to the last I saw it was $1.13. It's a penny stock now. And the largest company, if I'm not mistaken, it was at $37 in July, and it's down to about $13 now. So they're really taking. So that's two thirds of its value. That's huge, huge. All right. So that's it for me for Monday, December the 9th, 2024, day 1020 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. Guys, I would remind everybody that TikTok just lost its appeal in the United States. And its last recourse is to go to the Supreme Court. And we have no idea how they're going to vote. They're going to vote however Trump tells them to vote. Bunch of partisan hacks that he installed there and has stuck the American people with for the next 40 years. So I'm on YouTube. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. I'm on Instagram. Please follow me there. Thanks.